And now, coming to you live from Huntsville Attic Studios, it's Pop Culture Philosophers. And here are your hosts, Rockin, Robbie, Billups, and John Hammertime Holshoe.
Hey everybody, it's the Pop Culture Philosophers, coming to you live from the Huntsville Attic in beautiful Huntsville, Alabama. Today we're going to be talking about New York movies, all things New York. Actually, not just movies, New York. So we're going to talk about New York TV, New York movies, directors from New York, everything New York. We're really excited. It's I guess the city's so nice, they named it twice, right? The Big Apple, the Windy City, I hear them call it. Nobody calls it that. That's Chicago. So we're talking about New York. So we're going to talk about films. But we're also going to talk about, like I said, TV, directors, and all that makes New York great. Because it's this awesome city. I've never been there, but it's definitely one of the most influential cities. So I'm really excited. I'm John Hammertime. I'm John Holshoe, and joining with me always, Rockin' Robbie Billups.
Hey everybody, yes, New York movies. John, I'm so excited to be talking about New York movies because New York is incredibly important to film and incredibly important in film. So I'm super excited.
It's also important to the great state of New York.
Yes, it is,
The
actually.
city of New York.
So with us tonight, this was back in the Smile or Else days, which was the podcast before Pop Culture Philosophers. Mike the Voice Matthews here.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, yes, that's right. We got Mike the Voice Matthews. This was his idea to do a show based on New York movies.
Well, that's a terrible idea.
And so now you're here.
You're actually using a lot of my ideas, so...
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes we use your ideas, but not all of them. But anyway, yes. So you're here to talk about New York movies. Thank you, Mike, for being here.
Thank you. Oh, and the Windy City is technically Chicago.
I know.
Yeah, so I
Well, there's some people that
I
know
hope
there.
that John was pulling our chain.
And I have been to New York City.
I'm sure it's windy there too. So who the fuck can be like, oh, we're the windy? No, other cities are windy. You can't claim that. Fuck you, Chicago.
Also with us tonight, filling in for Justin Goldsmith, who had a family emergency, and our thoughts are with him right now. But we have Drew Madsen with us, everybody.
Yeah, thoughts and prayers to Justin. Lost his grandfather today, but he's doing well. He's drinking a little bit, which that's along the lines for Justin. So he's doing great today.
Indeed, we appreciate you filling in, Drew, on last minute notice. Seriously, Drew had about 3 hours maybe to prepare for this podcast.
Just about. Good thing a lot of my family's from around New York.
Good deal. So New York movies, John, I'm super excited. Why don't you tell us a little bit about New York herself?
Okay, so it's a city.
And tell it. What about? Is there an Old York?
There is actually.
Of course there is.
So New York it's the biggest city in the U.S. I've never been there. Heard it was amazing. In itself, it feels like this whole, it's huge. It's gigantic. Over 8.5 million people in the city alone. It's the most densely populated city, despite being 302 square miles. So I thought Huntsville was spread out. Holy shit, 302 square, and that's the city alone. Okay, it's the headquarters of the UN is there. Pretty awesome. It's considered a global power because of its impact on commerce, finance, media, art, fashion, technology, and entertainment. It's been described as a cultural, financial, and media capital of the world. It's divided in 5 boroughs, which we all know is Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, the Bronx, Staten Island.
Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, and Staten.
It's situated on one of the largest natural harbors in the world. That harbor houses the Statue of Liberty at Ellis Island. And that's why it's considered to be the gateway for legal immigration. And that's also because of diversity. It's one of the most diverse cities in the world. And they speak hundreds of different languages. Actually recorded to be over 800 different. I didn't even know there was more than 800 different languages. Over 800 different languages in the city of New York. And of course, it's been featured in many films, television, books, and comics because it's the home of Spider-Man.
And the rest of the Marvel Universe, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, but DC made up all these cities when New York's like, Marvel took the approach and let's take some cities, and why not New York? Because there's a bunch of Marvel characters here. It's a great city.
DC has a lot of fictional cities like Metropolis, Coast City, Star City, Gotham City, and Marvel mostly takes place in New York, which, and they have done books where the villains are like, screw New York, why don't we go to Denver and pull off crimes, right? So that's cool. But John, that's a brilliant history of New York, and New York is a vibrant and very important city in the entire world, if not our solar system at least. We got to give it that, right? As far as we're aware right now. We don't know what's lurking in Europa. Anyway, why New York, though? Why are we doing a podcast? This is Pop Culture Philosophers, not important city philosophers. Why are we doing a podcast about New York? I first of all think New York itself is a character. It is a character in these films. It's more than just a setting. A lot of movies can take place in any city. A lot of movies are just, they have to be in New York. New York is so important to that movie. There's lots of stuff, right? It's one of the largest, like John said, one of the largest, most iconic cities in the world, incredibly diverse and filled with culture. Many cultures, right? And it's got that beautiful skyline and the architecture, and economically, of course, it's one of the absolute most important cities in the world. It is the second largest film industry in the world, right outside of LA. But of course, the film industry started in New York, and a lot of actors go to New York and work on things like Broadway. It's the city that never sleeps. It has neon lights all night long. It's also beautiful and where dreams come true, yet it's strange and scary. So that's kind of why I think, in a nutshell, New York is so important and why we're doing a podcast about it in pop culture. Drew, what can you tell me about why New York? Why is it so important to pop culture, to movies, to TV, to comics?
Well, it grew up over the years, and you had all of these different cultures, a huge Irish community, huge Italian American. Like, everyone would come through Ellis Island, and all of these different cultures would come in, and they would expand. And you had Broadway, so there was the growing acting community. And it's weird how now, like, they say Hollywood, but they mean LA. But most of these movies, when you think about big movies, you think about New York, you think about the skyline, you think about all these important monuments, and very few comparatively, like, not many are set in LA, but everyone just flocks to New York because it's iconic, because the huge amount of people are there. You can go to any subset, any community for what you need.
Absolutely. Mike, what do you think? What do you got to add, especially since this was the genesis of this idea was in your fertile mind? So why New York? Why does it dignify a pop culture podcast?
New York mattered to me because I'd been there, and then for some reason, I guess it was watched a whole bunch of. I think it was you were like, oh, you need to watch this and this and this and this, and a whole bunch of Scorsese stuff, and it was just a love for the bigness, the lights, the art being music, writing, drawing. It was just really big on my mind at that time, and then it's just it needed to be spotlighted on its own.
Absolutely, it is a center for art culturally in the world. Like it's seriously, a lot of artists go there, not just actors and filmmakers, but also painters and sculptors and comic book artists and writers and just tons of varying people that participate in the liberal arts go to New York City to make it big. John, what do you have to add? Speaking of liberal and artsy, what do you have to add about why we are doing the New York Movies podcast?
I don't know. I have no idea why we're... No,
Yes,
you're like you said, it's a city that never sleeps. There's not only itself, it have a lot going on. It's a character in itself. There's all these great stories that come from New York, probably because of all the people and all the diversity. But there's also a lot of great directors have come from there. And like he said, Drew was talking about Broadway, or maybe you mentioned it. You have these actors, even these veteran actors, and they're like, oh, I've done so-and-so film, but I really want to go to Broadway and do it. I'm like, why? You've already scored it big, man. A lot of people want to move the other way. They want to go back, because I guess there's maybe that adrenaline, or maybe that, Broadway is a big deal. And the fact that used to be like the mecca of entertainment. It really was. Before Hollywood was established or became so big, New York was, all the actors and filming, and they still do shows there. I mean, Saturday Night Live is there, The Late Show. I mean, there's a lot of shows still done in New York, and there's still a lot of theater in New York. So, and then that gives us a lot of actors have spawned from that.
Absolutely. Mike?
One of the things that you said Broadway, and that's you can't, there's no takes. It's either you got it once, and then there's live, and then there's no green screens, there's no effects, no practical effects. So you have to be. Says you.
I heard Broadway's all green screen now.
You have to. You have to. I mean, you have to be an actor. You just can't go out there and just go, oh, I'm going to try this.
LA may be, the number one film industry city in America right now, and New York a very close number two, obviously, but it is the place for stage acting. Absolutely. And a lot of actors would tell you that that's way more difficult than probably taking, but it is grueling to do take after take after take after take. but there's something exhilarating about doing it all live. You're actually more in the character. You're not just fine-tuning these simple moments for takes over and over again, but you're actually being that character for an hour, 2 or 3, right? So exactly what we all just said is such a mystery. I loved New York growing up. I grew up a New York Yankees fan. One of the reasons why is because the New York Yankees are the greatest team in professional sports history. Also, just because it's an amazing place that always I just thought, like, that's where they made Marvel Comics. That's where they, at the time, made DC Comics. It felt alive. You could go outside, and there were giant buildings, and people were walking around all the time. Always something going on. It was like my city here in Huntsville was such a small version of that. I just had a crazy fascination with it. And I think so many people do because, first of all, New York is in a lot of movies, but then New York's so important, and it's a perpetuating cycle. Absolutely. That's what I think.
So I was wondering, just off the cuff, which, if you could live in any New York movie, which one and why? Which is kind of a weird question. So if you take a New York movie, and obviously it can be just a modern day thing, but I'm going to start off and just say something, I guess it doesn't have to necessarily take place in New York, but I always thought was a cool film. The Fifth Element, man. It does take place in New York. He's even a taxi driver in New York, right?
And they're like the 23rd century.
Yeah, it's supposed to be in the future. But that version of the future, how cool is that? I mean, if you got to have something takes place in the future, why not New York? It's already this big city, so can you imagine what's going to be like in 40 years from now when there are flying cars?
Yeah, you're talking about like Coruscant. Eventually, Earth's going to be known as New York Planet.
Or in Futurama, isn't it New York?
Yeah, it's New York because they're built on top of it.
Yeah, of the old New York. So are there any movies that you would, if you see that you say, man, that's the world I want to live in, that take place in New York, Drew?
It is a weird question because I thought about, because a lot of like the greatest New York movies, most of them are just like regular crime movies, so it's like we already live in that world, sort of, and then you can go off the wall with Ghostbusters, but it's like, I don't like the idea of a ghost just coming out, getting slimed.
Maybe not the best idea.
Yeah, but thinking about it, I kind of like the world that it's not too out of the ordinary, but it has really cool parts. John Wick. And that entire crime syndicate feel, and the fact that they respect this one organization, and you cannot do anything on continental ground. There are laws, and they have the way they run it. They have the old switchboards and old computers. It's just a really cool setting.
Is that a hotel he stays in? Is that in New York?
Yeah. The first movie set entirely in New York, and the second movie starts off, but then it swaps back and forth.
Okay, I guess I forgot about that, but that is a cool hotel, and it's cool to see the things happen that actually is in New York like that. Yeah. So that's great.
And everything looks like a cool synthwave YouTube video.
Yeah.
Moving on to Mike. If you could live in any New York movie, which movie and why?
Oh, man, there's just so many. It's like, do you want to live in ultra-violence? Do you want to live in Fantasyland? Like, which one would you want to pick?
Or even like 50s New York. I guess you could pick current New York, which is pretty awesome. But the reason I don't live there is not only do I have family here, but I heard it's expensive as shit to live there.
Yeah. My first time to New York, it was, I remember it's like, all right, I'm going to get a Big Mac. It's the #1 at McDonald's. And it was $2.99 here in Huntsville, Alabama. Get up there and it's like...
What year was this, 1982? What year was
it? First time I went to New York was 1999.
Okay.
So
yeah, in the 90s, the Big Mac meal was $2.99. I can vouch for that.
Wow.
I can vouch for that.
Things have changed.
So was the 2 cheeseburgers meal.
Oh, that was the shit.
Which I preferred.
Yeah, me too.
I guess I want to live, if I had to pick one, I guess I would want to say, something more modern. So, I don't want to, this is rough.
You got to pick one, sir.
Let's just go ahead and say, I want to live in the land of American Tail. Not American Tail, but Oliver and Company.
Oliver and Company. Okay.
Oh, I thought you were going to American Tail. Which is also New York.
It's a Disney movie, so everything's happy and there. Let's go.
Yeah, that's a good one.
American Tail, not so happy. Don Bluth films are more depressing films. Robbie,
you got to think about the bathroom situation when you're picking this too.
Wait, is Oliver and Company the one with the cats?
Yeah, it's Cat and the Dogs and Billy Joel.
Yeah.
Okay. Wait, would you be a cat, or
There's
would you be a
definite-
person in
there's-
that world?
I guess you would be a cat as an animal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go with
That's
that.
not far-fetched in reality.
Thus making the bathroom situation way better than American Tail.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But John,
Secret
me,
Life of Pets. That's another one.
John, for me, I would pick. You said Fifth Element. That's a good one. Because who wouldn't want to go live in a crazy future like that?
Multipass.
Exactly.
Multipass.
So there's that one. But then I would say New York, the Martin Scorsese film with Liza Minnelli and Robert De Niro, because that movie is grounded in reality in the way that people act and the drama that's happening, but it is filmed in a fantasy 50s musical New York, right? Like Scorsese wanted the curbs to be higher than they actually are because they always were in the old movies, and just the way that everything is obviously a cardboard backdrop, including the subway, and it's just a magical, beautiful musical version of New York, and that's the one I would want to live in.
Yeah, we didn't film it in the 70s, but it's basically a romanticized 50s version of New York.
Yes, even and filmed in the style of 50s musicals, even though it's a contemporary dramatic film by Scorsese.
So we established Drew would want to be in like the gang version of New York, but still as a person. You would want to be in the 50s musical, but still as a person. I would want to be in the future, but as a person. And Mike would want to be a fucking cat. Has nothing to do with New York. He just wants to be a cat.
I'd living on the streets as a dog in New York City.
Or a dog.
There's some stories
Yeah,
behind
Mike would
that,
definitely
man.
be a big like bull mastiff or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Or St. Bernard.
No,
something
Bull
like that.
Mastiff, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of
dog.
which, we need to get you flea treated. Moving on.
A brain
Actually,
popsicle.
nothing to move on. That's the end of this segment. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. I will be right back here in a second on Pop Culture Philosophers. We're going to talk more about New York.
Hey everybody, Rockin Robbie here. I want to talk to you real quick about the Pop Culture Philosophers on Patreon. That's right, we are now on Patreon, where you can support us for as little as $1 a month. What will that get you? Well, for starters, it will get you access to our brand new exclusive Patreon show, PCP After Hours. That's right, after every podcast, we keep the mics live for about 15 to 20 minutes, and we just let it ride. We release that exclusive to our Patreon supporters. Also, you can get shout outs in our videos. You can also get your name listed in the credits of our videos and other cool special treats and more announcements coming soon, including a Patreon exclusive contest each month. So get on patreon.com/PCP. That's an easy one to remember, right? Patreon.com/PCP to get your instant access to exclusive Pop Culture Philosophers content. Hey everybody, welcome back to Pop Culture Philosophers New York Movies. That's right, we're talking about all things New York pop culture related, especially movies. And we've already talked a little bit about the history of New York and why we're doing this podcast and what New York movie world we would live in. Some great answers on those. It really told us a lot about our personalities. But thank you guys for checking us out. And now we're going to talk about the small screen TV shows, because New York is everywhere. It permeates pop culture. It permeates film and TV and comics and music and all kinds of crazy stuff. So, what are your favorite TV shows set in New York City? Mike the Voice Matthews?
I have several.
Tell us.
The Law and Order SVU.
Yeah,
Every one of them.
Criminal Intent. Seinfeld, Friends. Mad About You. NYPD Blue.
yeah, some good ones.
The other one from the '80s, Hill Street Blues.
Okay.
A lot of crime drama coming out of there. Castle, I think, was in New York City, was it?
Yeah, Castle's in New
The
York.
Nathan Fillion one?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. If you had to pick one out of all of them, what would it be?
Oh man,
Exactly.
that's just Seinfeld.
Seinfeld. I'm going to go with Seinfeld as my absolute favorite as well. You mentioned Friends. I love Friends. I'm watching Friends right now. I'm in season 7. And I'm loving it, guys. I'm also loving The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt on
that's
Netflix.
okay,
That's
yeah.
a great one. Daredevil,
Yeah.
Saturday Night Live, right? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Night Court, I wanted to say that before John did. And a PBS show from the 90s, I don't know if many people remember it, called Ghost Writer.
Oh, he drove the motorcycle.
No. It was about a ghost that was like a ghost punctuation mark that was like undefined. And he could only communicate with these children through words, like printed words. And it was a good show. Anyway, Drew, speaking of printed words, Drew reads a lot of printed words. Tell us, what are your favorite New York TV shows?
I mean, you can tell from one of my recent printed words articles. I mean, my favorite show set in New York is definitely Iron Fist. I mean,
too soon.
No.
That show's more consistent than most Marvel properties. I'm just going to say.
Yeah,
It's consistently
Yeah,
bad.
Consistently it's got the same level of mediocrity the whole time.
yeah, but there are definitely a ton. Like, I grew up watching Friends, Seinfeld, and all those. Like, the vast majority of all of sitcoms are set in New York. And then you have recent shows, which I really love, Suits. And then you have my favorite, like, newer show, Mr. Robot, is set in New York. Like, a lot of, like, the most important scenes, he's, like, talking in a deserted Times Square, and then talking to himself on Coney Island. And just things like that. It's very much set in New York, and
Isn't there a
everyone's from
secret
there.
base on Coney Island?
Yeah, in the Mr. Robot bar.
Oh, yeah.
or the arcade.
The arcade, yeah.
What about you, John? Favorite New York TV shows?
Other than you guys mentioned Mad Men,
Oh yeah,
Taxi. No one mentioned Taxi.
Oh, yeah.
30 Rock, which brings us back to SNL. And then Seinfeld, like I said, Seinfeld is probably my favorite set in New York. And I spoke to somebody earlier, and they were like, well, it's really, that could have been said anywhere. Well, no, what makes it so great is it is a show about nothing, but what moves the show along is the city that they're in.
Yeah,
I mean,
the
really,
city is a
lot
big
of the
deal.
things that happen to them are not going to happen to them in
It doesn't happen
small
in the
town
Golden.
and-
It doesn't happen in the Golden Girls.
Yeah, exactly. So
No,
that
but even like when he goes down to Florida to visit his parents, it's his New York mindset, what they're used to, like
Yeah.
the soup Nazi, like all that stuff is quintessentially New
yeah,
York.
the parking
and
thing,
based on real things.
Yeah, and the parking garage, and then the fighting over a parking spot. There's a lot of things that happen in New York, and so even though it's a show about nothing, New York itself is such a big character in the show. So I think it's really influential, and that's why I think it's a great show. But other than that, like I said, Mad Men is one of my favorites. I'm surprised nobody brought Mad Men up because it's during the 60s, but it's 60s New York, and they do such a good job giving you that 60s New York feel. I love it. I love the settings.
Madison Avenue. Is a
Yeah,
big
Madison
part,
Avenue is just, it's done so well, and just the style. What a stylish show.
So we can all be different. I'm just going to go ahead and change mine to 30 Rock.
Okay.
Forgot
All
about
right,
that.
30
It's
Rock.
amazing.
Well, mine, to one up Mike, is 31 Rock.
Oh yeah.
Well, you haven't seen 32 Rock yet.
Son of a bitch. So besides the shows, obviously we were talking about films earlier. We're going to go into that a little more, but there's a lot of great directors who have come out of New York or influential. You know what I'm saying? They put a lot of films based in New York, or they brought that New York state of mind to their filmmaking. Some of those, I'll throw them out there and we'll go into more discussion. Martin Scorsese, Spike Lee, Woody Allen, Mel Brooks. What do these four guys have in common? Well, they're old and they're white, and they're from and love New York.
Except for
I
Spike
was
Lee.
about to say Spike Lee.
God damn it! Why did I say that? We'll just edit all this out.
Aside from Spike Lee.
Well, okay, they're all from New York. I know Spike Lee's not white, dude. I know this. I've seen Do the Right Thing. So, anyway, great directors, but again, these directors spawn from New York, but it influences their filmmaking. A lot of these films are set in New York, or if they're not set in New York, they definitely have a style to them, and they do have a lot of films. Scorsese, I'd say maybe 10% of Scorsese's films are based in New York, because he's had such a large library of films. And you got Spike Lee's probably more films. Woody Allen, a lot of films. Mel Brooks, probably less so, but he's definitely, some of his films take place in New York, and he's definitely, you can tell he's passionate about the city of New York, and he comes from New York. Scorsese, some may make my list because, we could go on. We could do a Scorsese podcast, actually. So Taxi Driver, New York. New York, obviously, we discussed earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Gangs of New York
Yeah.
with Daniel Day-Lewis, who recently retired from film.
Bringing Out the Dead.
Bringing Out the Dead.
After Hours.
After Hours
Is a much underappreciated New York movie from Scorsese.
Yeah, he's got a lot of films that take place in New York. There's some other ones that I was thinking of, and then I looked them up and like, oh shit, this doesn't take place in New
And of
York.
course, Spike Lee has a few. Do the Right Thing, as you mentioned, which you have seen, and you know Spike Lee is a black American.
Yes. Crooklyn?
The 25th Hour,
Is that him?
Crooklyn, Summer of Sam, lots of good
Oh,
films.
yeah.
You know, Woody Allen, of course, with Manhattan and Annie Hall, and
Annie
of course,
Hall.
New York Stories. I mean, come on, a lot of his other movies, Curse of the Jade Scorpion, and Mel Brooks has the producers, but he is obviously so influenced from the culture of the comedy era, the comedy of the New York scene, the comedy scene in the 60s, for sure, and into the 70s. I love those. Those guys are amazing. I really like those guys a lot. Drew, what do you think about some of these directors?
I think the biggest impact that you can tell, obviously, these guys from New York is definitely their dialogue in either writing or directing it, because it definitely has the attitude.
Do you think it's like because New York has this stage act, like we were talking about how like it's about the stage more in New York, it's about doing it in the moment and being, and like I think that really helps with comedy, with improv. There's a lot of improv acts in New York that are really big. Like, do you think that adds to the element of like why these guys in particular have such good dialogue and it feels fresh?
Yeah, definitely. Like they're able to just think, and a lot of things, like especially if you're out on the street and if somebody bumps into you, like you automatically want to quit back and like come back with something, and that's what that New York attitude is all about. And that's why a lot of these scenes, just talking on the street, like that could be a normal conversation. You could tell that these guys have lived in the city. They know everything about it.
You just made me think of something. Justin Goldsmith sent us his top 5, and we'll reveal that later on. But I'm really disappointed that he did not have Star Trek The Voyage Home on his top 5. You just made me think of that when you were talking about the way people talk in New York. And like, yeah. Isn't it? Wait, they don't go back to New York.
No,
do
it's
they?
San Francisco.
It's San Francisco. Never mind.
I was about to say,
Is that the one with the whales?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, God.
Yeah, never mind. Well, Justin, congratulations. We mentioned Star Trek on a New York podcast.
you know a little bit more than we thought.
Yeah. Mike, you want to talk about some of these directors here?
Yes.
Get down on this. Maybe there's some directors I forgot.
You forgot Sidney Lamont.
What about Billy Wilder?
Well,
Did The Apartment? Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say it's Lumet.
Yeah.
Who
is that?
12 Angry Men.
Yeah.
Dog Day Afternoon.
yeah.
Serpico.
Oh,
Network,
Dog Day Afternoon, yeah.
The Verdict.
See, I didn't know
But for-
his name, but I know those movies.
Yeah,
I didn't,
yeah. It's one of those that was like, oh, wait a minute, you're forgetting a big one.
Oh, yeah.
Stanley Kubrick was born in New York, but not a lot.
He didn't
of
really
stuff
do a
was
lot of
done.
films. He's definitely from New York, yeah.
He's from New York, and the Coen brothers too. They don't do a lot of. They've got maybe 1, 2 in New York.
I can think of one.
Llewellyn Davis.
Yeah, Llewellyn Davis.
Yeah.
Llewellyn Davis.
I thought they had.
I can't think of another one, but yeah.
I didn't know.
But
I didn't know they were
But
from
Serpico
those ones. I
did
didn't
for
even
sure.
know.
But yeah, Sidney Lamont was that's the one that's
All right, guys. What are your favorite moments in New York movies? Like, we're going to be getting in segment 3 in our top 5 favorite New York movies. Of course, you're listening to Pop Culture Philosophers. We're all about the top 5s here. But before we get to all that, what is your favorite moment in a New York movie? Hammertime, Holshoe?
Okay, this is going to be lame. You guys can give me shit for this one. But, so, they meet at the Empire State Building in A Fair to Remember, if you recall. And Sleepless in Seattle actually has a throwback to that. Because the whole film, most of the film takes place in Seattle, but they meet at the end in the Empire State Building. And they actually miss each other, and then they have to go back or whatever. And then you don't really see what happens, but you assume that they get together and live happily ever after. So that's sort of corny, I guess, but I do like that. But one of my favorites, and this is a scene that literally everybody knows, because you even mentioned it earlier, was the Harry Met Sally scene in Katz's Deli.
Yes.
Which is like, if I was going to go to New York, that's one of the places I most want to visit is Katz's Deli. All these places you could visit.
Yeah.
I want to go to a real deli.
There's a lot of restaurants and just like the exteriors of buildings, like the firehouse from Ghostbusters. That really exists. You can go there. You can take
did not know
pictures. Like,
that.
it's a firehouse looking thing. It doesn't,
What do they
say
do there now?
Slimer's not there or whatever.
Yeah.
What do they do? I don't know. I think they probably sell Ghostbusters merchandise if they're smart.
So, those are probably the two of my favorites, so that I'll have what she's having.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, okay. Rob Reiner classic, another New York influenced filmmaker.
And maybe throw one more in there. And this could have been any toy store, but how many toy stores have a giant ass floor piano?
Did you not want to go find who didn't want a floor piano?
It's
Like,
probably harder than it
because
looks.
of big, yeah,
to
absolutely.
play on that.
And play chopsticks though, it's easy.
Oh yeah.
But you got to like spread out them legs, man. And what's his name? He's old, man.
Yeah, I
you
forgot
know,
that actor's name.
I can't
Robert
remember.
Loggia?
Was that his?
Robert Loggia. Yeah, it is actually.
He's the guy that was in Problem Child.
Yeah, he's the boss man
He's
from
in Sopranos too. Yeah.
He's a great actor.
That's
actually.
great actor, and lots of good stuff. That's some good answers, John. What about you, Drew? What do you think?
When I think of like the quintessential New York moment, it's an ad lib, and I think Midnight Cowboy, the "I'm walking here," which wasn't supposed to happen, and he wanted to say Dustin Hoffman wanted to say, "Hey, we're shooting here," but the guy almost hit him,
Yeah.
so he just like, "Poof, I'm walking here," and that's why I love like that attitude really just comes out in that moment.
That's a great movie starring, of course, John Voight and Dustin Hoffman, as you mentioned. A great quintessential New York film and a quintessential New York moment from Drew Quintessential Madsen.
I feel like I was upped. Fuck you.
So what about you, Mike? What favorite New York movie moment?
I'm going to go with the opening for Die Hard 3.
Okay.
The song Hot Times I'm in the City.
Yeah.
But then it's the sun is rising and you have all these great landscape shots of New York City, and then all of a sudden, bam, you're on the street and it's dirty, it's gritty, and it's New York is the streets, it is the people, and that's what it does. So.
Absolutely. That's a good one. I will throw in there, first of all, the opening of Rent, where they're like, "We're not gonna pay.
Doesn't
We're
surprise me.
not gonna pay." Yeah, I love that. I love the opening of the movie where they really capture what's on stage but made it bigger, and you see all the people hanging out of their buildings in New York, and it just really captures New York to me. And I just love it. But also the moment in Gremlins 2, the new batch, when they all gather together in the lobby of the office building and they start singing New York, New York from the movie
it's a
New
great-
York, New York.
Yeah.
One of my absolute favorite New York movie moments.
I should have mentioned Gremlins. I love me some Gremlins. And they do the whole thing in New York. They have it's the smart one that kind of leads
The
them
brain.
into that. Yeah. The glasses. He looks and sounds like Fraser Crane.
Yeah.
So I was talking about the Empire State Building earlier, that whole scene with Sleepless in Seattle.
Sleeping in Seattle?
When you think of Sleepless in Seattle,
That'd be a
and you
whole
think of
different
Seattle,
movie.
you automatically think of the Empire State Building. So there were some great monuments in that city, and they've made it into film, of course, because, how else do you prove you're in New York than other having those ornaments? I mean, I even seen films where they're like, we shot it in Vancouver, but we had to shoot 2 scenes in New York because we had to use the Statue of Liberty or something like that. Or is that Gotham statue? What's the one in Batman Forever?
Batman Forever has the Statue of Liberty, basically.
Yeah. So there are some iconic monuments in New York, and they lend themselves well to film. So let's talk a little about those. We could start off with Drew.
When one of the first like big movie moments with monuments was definitely like King Kong on the Empire State Building, just swatting airplanes left and right. And most of the times, like when you want like a big noticeable building in New York, you go for that. You also have the I forget the actual name, but the Wall Street Bull. I forget the actual name of the monument.
I know what bull you're talking about. I can't remember the.
Yeah. You see it all the time, and I just think, oh yeah, that bull's from Wall Street.
Yeah.
And what movie is it?
Does it have testicles?
In what movie was it? They cut them off and they throw them somewhere.
I don't remember.
There's something I can't remember. It's movie or TV where they actually like cut off the balls from the testicle or balls from the bull, and they drop them. I think in Washington, like down in the Capitol building.
I just realized you said they cut the balls from the testicle at first.
We got a surprise for you. Those balls are here. No, I'm kidding.
Yes, they're yours.
They're really heavy.
Some other ones are like, obviously, there's the Statue of Liberty, utilized in such films like Ghostbusters 2, like where they make it move with the slime. I love that movie.
Or X-Men.
Right? Like, what a brilliant concept. First of all, in the first movie, you can make tons of money selling green slime. And then in the second movie, you can make tons of money selling green slime and pink slime.
Oh, yeah.
It was amazing. And I love that toaster scene as well. But also, the New York Public Library is in Ghostbusters.
Yeah, the
and
first
Yankee
Ghostbusters.
Stadium is a giant monument in New York and is used in movies such as Pride of the Yankees. But Tom's Restaurant, which doubles as Monk's Diner in
Yeah,
Seinfeld,
Monk's.
is a real place that you can go and, like Cat's Delicatessen, and it's there. And those are some of the ones that, like, when I go to New York, I'm going to visit them for sure.
Has anybody seen pictures of Tom's? Does it look like at all like the
It's
footage?
very close inside.
Okay.
But it's identical outside.
Yeah, I saw pictures of it.
Except for it doesn't say
It
Mom's.
just says restaurant on it,
It says
right?
Tom's Restaurant. Yeah.
Yeah, restaurant. Generic restaurant.
Speaking of generic restaurants.
Yeah. What's it to you?
Monuments in film. What stands out to you? What monuments in New York in general stick out to you and say this epitomizes New York? Besides the Empire State Building and Statue of Liberty we talked about.
The Intrepid Sea and Air Museum.
Oh yeah.
In the harbor. You always see the naval, the ships, and
That's
and
parked. They're
everything.
parked there. Yeah.
They're parked there, and then it's just kind
Like
of
what? Like, give me an example of a movie.
It's one of those iconic background scenes
Okay.
that you see. The only thing that comes to think of my mind is the Geico commercial
Okay.
where he lands yeah. I mean, it's just one of those. Statue of Liberty,
Now,
Battery Park.
yeah.
One of the most
Central Park.
Central
Yeah.
Park.
Bar, yeah.
I said the fountain in Central Park.
That's not actually where the Friends intro was filmed.
the.
So apparently
no,
it was a soundstage.
there is a big.
But
huge,
people go to that fountain.
There's
and
the
they,
big park.
They have
Yeah.
a problem with people jumping into it, trying to recreate the Friends
Really?
opening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's in Home Alone 2, the stairwell.
Yeah.
When he's running into Central Park, that stairwell's and everything.
Even something as
The
simple
ju-
as Macy's is a big deal.
Macy's
Oh, yeah.
is.
Yeah.
John Lennon's Imagine Memorial. That's in a lot of movies.
Yeah.
I had one. It's New Jersey, but a lot of the landscape shots are shot. I think it's Highway 3 or something like that.
And of course,
it's
it's
overlooking everything. So it's the
And
landscape in itself is.
absolutely super iconic. The World Trade Center back in the day was super iconic in
Yeah.
film. And of course, a lot of the bridges utilized, for instance, in the Spider-Man films, especially the Sam Raimi one. So a lot of stuff like that.
And I Am Legend, was that the ship he was playing
Yeah.
golf off of?
Yes.
Yeah, that was Intrepid.
Okay. And I was going to say the last thing, I think you covered most of them. I was going to say the Chrysler Building.
Yeah, it's big. Godzilla.
Yeah. Godzilla 98.
98, yeah.
I was trying to forget about that.
Woof.
We're like, Godzilla! 98.
But I would say probably the Empire and Chrysler, which we've touched upon, are probably the most famous buildings in New York. And then, of course, now, and we'll probably see this in future films, the One World Trade Center, which is
Yes.
beautiful, and I think it's the largest building in the U.S. at least, maybe the world.
Not,
The Empire, is it the largest?
Not the world.
Well, in the U.S.
Yeah.
And I think the Empire used to be the largest in the U.S. for a while. Was the largest in the world, and that's why it was in so many films, and that's why.
Was Sears
you gotta put King
Tower
Tower.
not bigger than the Empire State Building?
I think Sears came after. I think Sears is the one.
Sears
that
was
topped it.
after.
I don't
Yeah.
know. That's interesting. But there's also lots of the Wall Street, the stock exchange, all
Oh,
that
yeah.
stuff. You mentioned the bull, but just all that. And God, there was one more I thought of, and I can't remember it right now. But oh well, shit for me.
Oh, you're thinking of where the Bulls play.
Madsen Square Garden. That's a good
the
one.
Knicks, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Where the Pittsburgh Penguins play, isn't that in New York?
Madison Square Garden. How have we been talking
Yeah,
about
I was
Madison
about to
Just
say,
Square
said,
we
Garden?
he just said
missed it.
that. He literally
Oh,
just.
my bad. I'm still trying to find stuff about the Intrepid.
Also Godzilla. Ooh.
We appreciate people tuning in because apparently Mike is not fucking tuning in, and he's sitting right here with us. We're talking about Madison Square Garden. So,
Highlander, man. Highlander. The opening scene in Highlander in the garden with the wrestling.
Yeah.
Come on now.
anyway, so we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with our top 5. Maybe we check in with the old social media on Pop Culture Philosophers, New York movies. Or just New York. I don't know, however it's called. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, it's Rockin' Robbie here. I am thrilled to announce another all-new episode of Rockin' with Rockin' Robbie is about to hit exclusive to YouTube. This time we're talking about lies and fish. It's going to be super, super fun. I am there, Hammertime, Holshoe, Justified Justin, and Jumpin' and Jivin' James discussing lies and fish. A nice mixture of subjects including Charlie the Tuna and President Nixon. Of course, you hear both of those subjects in the same podcast when you're talking about lies and fish. That's Rockin' with Rockin' Robbie, exclusive only to the Pop Culture Philosophers YouTube channel.
Welcome back to Pop Culture Philosophers. We're about to talk about our top 5 New York movies. But first, Robbie, I think you went out to the social media, the face page, and you asked people their favorite New York movies.
Yes, we did. We said, hey, tell us your favorite New York movie, and we'll mention it on the podcast. And there were a lot of responses, and I'm going to name them all because they're all really, really good answers. Jason Frazier said Die Hard with a Vengeance. Scott Green said Gangs of New York. James Donahoe said Escape from New York. Devin Gately said Ghostbusters. Adam Lander said Inside Man. Lance Allen said Big. Clem Urban said Escape from New York. Tommy Davis said Goodfellas, to which Alicia Mayro said, that's right, I agree. John Tichy said Escape from New York. George Rivera said Hercules in New York. Andre Wakefield said the Spider-Man trilogy. Barbara Artillo said Arthur. John Prince said King of New York. Brian Weaver said Do the Right Thing and the Master of None episode I Love New York. Amanda Whitley said Secret Life of Pets. Dustin Ward said Gangs of New York. Richard Werder, congratulations on the new child, homie, said Taxi Driver, The Warriors, and Escape from New York. Nate Huddleston said Ghostbusters 1 and 2. Lisa Folden said The Godfather. Randy Riley said Escape from New York. Rob Godwin said Escape from New York. Chris Sari said Home Alone 2 and Day After Tomorrow.
Forgot about that one.
Wow, Mia, for a good reason. Erica Adams said Annie Hall, Muppets Take Manhattan, and Serendipity. Serendipity's a great movie. That cafe is another place you can go visit in New York. And George's brother Nathan Rivera said Escape from New York. So overwhelmingly, Escape from New York. But the best answer of the night comes from David Hatch, our #1 Patreon subscriber and supporter. He said any movie where New York City gets destroyed. It's pretty awesome to me.
There's a lot of movies, actually.
Avengers, yeah, there we go.
That was almost going to be its own thing because it gets annihilated, either annihilated or partially destroyed in so many films.
So David has the best answer of the night, and of course the best, most funniest, the thing that we choose to be the best answer of the night on a podcast. You're going to get a special prize. We'll be talking to you, homie.
Nobody mentioned Jason Takes Manhattan. I was surprised.
What?
The award-winning, Oscar-winning.
Is that not on your top 5?
It's not, actually.
We thought
It's not even the best Jason movie.
I told Mike, I was like, I guarantee you Jason Takes Manhattan is on John's top 5.
It's not even the best Jason movie.
I got a bad feeling that his top 5 is going to be more like Justin's.
All right. Speaking of Justin, someone got his top 5. Get it pulled up and let's get going, John.
Yeah, I'll read you back his 5. Number 5. No, I don't have his. Does somebody have it?
Yes, I do.
I was just going to make up films that weren't in New York.
Right, Justin's top 5. I'm just going to read them off, no explanation.
Yeah, that's fine.
Number 5 is Goodfellas. Number 4 is Men in Black 3.
What the fuck?
Number 3 is Avengers. Number 2, Escape from New York. And number 1 is The Watchmen. And asked why he came up with the list, he goes, those are not necessarily the best, but those are my favorites.
And that is what the show is about, is favorite. So now let's get into our top 5 favorite New York movies.
Okay, we're going to do our top 5. I'll actually start with Drew. Drew, give us your top 5 and start with number 5.
All right, number 5, I got Gangs of New York.
Great film.
Great period piece.
Yeah.
And, I mean, big ups. Daniel Day-Lewis just retired from acting.
Again.
But he was insane.
Yeah, he's going to be he's like MJ or Jay-Z, though.
We can hope.
He'll be back.
Yeah. Number 4, I got Do the Right Thing. A great street level view of New York, and during a heat wave when there's a lot of tension between race, between police, and it's just a great movie. 3, Taxi Driver. Robert De Niro is kind of insane in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just great acting, great lines, like, you talking to me? that whole scene. Number 2, which I don't see like anybody mention at all when I see like New York movies, but I love, and it's the one movie that I got to watch today before coming here, The French Connection.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it launched the career of Gene Hackman, and he was the mayor in Jaws, or not the mayor, the
Roy Schneider?
Roy Scheider, yeah.
Scheider,
Yeah.
Schneider.
He was the other cop in French Connection, and it was the first R-rated movie to win Best Picture.
It's a great film.
Yeah.
And him racing the L train can only be done in New York. That was a big.
That's big too, because it shows like people aren't going to move out of your way in New York. Number 1, Goodfellas. I love the movie. We still say, "Go get your fucking shine box" all the time.
My clown, am I funny to you?
Funny.
That's a really good top 5.
That's a fantastic top 5. I feel ashamed of my top 5. Now, let's just cut the show right there. Thanks for no. I'm kidding. That's a fantastic. That's great. So that's your. But that surprised me by your number 1.
What does Goodfellas speak to you about New York?
Yeah, that's so great. It's your number 1.
It definitely has the attitude there throughout the entire movie, and then it just shows like the humble beginnings and his ascent, and like the more power you get, the more unstable you get. And it just culminates, and then you have all these incredible actors coming in throughout the entire movie, and he gets the best out of them. It's just great throughout the entire movie.
Absolutely.
Well, great list. Moving on to Rockin' Robbie Billups.
Hey.
Here are not top 5 films about New York, or from New York, or in New York.
My top 5. Number 5 is the 1968 classic debut from Mel Brooks, The Producers.
Great film.
Written and directed by Brooks. I love it. It can only happen in New York. It's about Broadway. It's about dreaming to make it big in Broadway. It's incredibly funny. A great cast. Is it Zero?
Gene
Zero
Wilder's.
must. Yeah, and Gene Wilder. Absolutely. Great cast. An amazing movie. Super funny. And just about that New York dream. And one of the reasons why New York fascinates me so much is that idea of if I can make it here, I can make it anywhere. Absolutely. An honorable mention to New York, New York. Didn't make my list because I felt like I only could put one Scorsese film on here, and it lands at number 4, 1991's Goodfellas. One Scorsese film, one gangster film. It's Goodfellas. Written by Nicholas Pileggi and Martin Scorsese, and directed by Scorsese. Love this movie. Like Drew said, he covered a lot of it already. It is quintessentially New York. It is about growing up in New York and taking the easy way out. We associate a lot of crime, gangster-type movies with New York because of the rise of the mafia in New York.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And other cities, of course, have their own mobster movies like Chicago and L.A., but New York just stands out, and Goodfellas stands out ahead of that. Number 3, 1988's Big, starring Tom Hanks. Written by Gary Ross and Ann Spielberg, actually, and directed by Penny Marshall. An amazing movie that really exemplifies a childhood fascination with New York. You're a child, you wish you could grow up and just live in the big city and have that big life, and that's what happened to this kid. And it was a great fantasy film that I absolutely adored growing up, and really hit the nail hard in me about what New York was and what it would be like to experience it. And number 2, Gremlins 2, the new batch from 1990.
Number 2, holy shit.
Yeah, written by Charles Haas. Directed by the great Joe Dante.
Joe Dante.
I love the Gremlins films, and Gremlins 2 is great, and it does have to happen in New York because not only is it a gremlin outbreak, which could happen anywhere, like in the first movie, but now there's a genetic lab where they get into all this stuff and mutate themselves, and that could only happen in like a New York type setting. It's a great scene at the end, like I mentioned earlier, where they're singing New York, New York together. It's just great. And like really an office building that's like a TV studio, and all this other stuff thrown together, a mall, and it's just fantastic. It's only something that would happen in New York, it seems. And number 1, the 1989 Spike Lee classic, Do the Right Thing. Written and directed, of course, by Spike Lee, who is a black American, not an old white guy, as some people actually do believe. It's a weird conspiracy theory, but it's a great movie. It's incredibly culturally significant, and was deemed so by the Library of Congress. It's a great film. I think it's Spike Lee's best. He's done some really, really good films, like Malcolm X. But did I say Stanley or did I say Spike Lee?
No, you said Spike Lee, but I'm still thinking about earlier when I called him an
we
old white dude.
We thought I was going to mess up.
Yeah,
because
Stan
earlier,
Lee.
throughout the whole week, every time I was trying to say Spike Lee, I would say Stanley.
Well, Spike Lee did create all those comics for Marvel, so
Exactly,
it's confusing.
which take place in New York.
Yeah,
But
he made Malcolm X another old white guy, right, John?
It's a great movie, like Drew
damn
said, about racial tensions erupting on the hottest day of summer. It's got brilliant performances, amazing actors in that movie, and just a really tight script that comes together in a very poignant tale about America. And that's what I look about. That's my top 5.
Great top 5. Yeah, Spike Lee, so awesome. And yeah, he probably more than any other director, you can see that New York influenced him, and he sets a lot of his films in New York. Moving on to Mike Matthews, your top 5, sir.
An honorable mention from across the river on the waterfront. It's not New York based, but it is still mob crime. There's a little bits and pieces of New York that you can see. So if we do,
So it
New
doesn't
Jersey,
count at all.
it
Then.
doesn't count at all. But
So that's why it's honorable.
but it's one of my favorites.
Okay.
I thought it was in New York at first, but it has to do with the whole boxing and just the prize fighting, Madison Square Garden. Number 5 is the 1947 classic Miracle on 34th Street. It's got the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in it. Santa Claus. It's an icon.
That's the Christmas one with the Santa Claus is real or whatever.
Santa Claus is real. And they're like, no, he's
Yeah,
not real.
okay, I
and
remember
then
that
they go to trial, and
Yeah, it's a classic
So-
film. Yeah.
it's a fun one.
Yeah.
Number 4 is French Connection. Drew kind of went into that already, so I will skip that. Number 3, I've mentioned. It's Oliver and Company. The classic.
Noise.
Not this again. It's the classic Oliver. It's the classic tale
It's
of
an
Oliver
Oliver Twist, right? But with cats.
with cats
if
and
I
dogs,
recall.
and more a modern update. So it's a very fun movie. If you have kids, I suggest picking it up. Number 2, Inside Llewyn Davis. Music is a big factor of New York City. It's one of the
Oh
biggest
yeah,
arts.
yeah, you're right.
So-
A lot of great musicians have come from New York, and a lot of great studios in New York.
Yeah.
We should have brought that up, but I'm happy you brought that up.
So music is a big role in it. So, and then number 1 is Leon the Professional.
Great film.
So,
How did I miss that? It's great.
I mean, if
Did you just say, how did I miss that?
Yeah,
That was
that's
great.
I mean, it's my favorite. If we're going by favorites, it's my favorite one. So, I mean, it's
Yeah.
dirty. It's dirty. It's gritty. And
Great cast.
Oh yeah, Gary
Oh
Oldman's
shit.
killer,
Yeah.
Natalie Portman. Yeah,
And what's the French actor's name? John Russo or whatever?
Jean Reno.
John Reno. Who am I thinking of? Rene Russo. is what I'm
Rene
thinking.
Russo.
She's not in it.
His cousin. His distant cousin.
Distant French cousin. But you're right. What a great film. And that's Luc Besson, right? The director.
Yeah.
And he
Fifth
also
Element.
did Fifth Element. So he obviously likes New York. And even though he's French, who doesn't love New York? Why would you not want to set a film in New York? And maybe that's where he sort of got his American acting, or I'm sorry, American directing to be. Maybe New York became New York to make films.
Well,
maybe.
it's kind of funny because there's that terrible movie with Jimmy Fallon and Queen Latifah, the taxi driver.
Oh my god.
I don't think that's
Yeah.
Taxi Driver. I think that's Taxi or something.
Taxi.
I think it is. Yeah,
Something
it's
Taxi.
But it's a remake of one of his
Of Taxi
films.
Driver.
No, it's a remake of his film.
Oh, really?
It's in French, and I think in Taxi 3, Stallone.
Wait a minute. There's
appeared.
taxis in France?
Yeah,
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah,
everywhere.
but they all have bread.
And they're driven by mimes.
Yeah, and they're
I really want you to fucking drive. Don't just keep making
Hey,
the motion.
if you,
That sounds great.
Check out
driven by mimes made of bread.
what was that? The Jackie Chan, Chris Tucker movie,
Rush Hour?
Rush Hour 3. I think is the one that takes place in Paris, and the
Ah.
cab driver is actually the. So there you go.
So on our Paris podcast, when we come back, I'm kidding.
Nobody
So,
will mention Rush Hour 3.
I might.
So I'm going to get to my top 5 here. Honorable mention, we talked about that earlier, was Watchmen, which takes place in New York. Great film. Snyder's best film. However, that being said,
You think that's Snyder's best film?
I do.
Huh.
I also think that
Huh.
film, I don't think there's any scenes in New York, though,
I didn't
that
know
couldn't,
that about you.
couldn't be done elsewhere. You know what I'm saying? So even though it takes place, there's
I
parts
think it's
in New York.
definitely got to be set in New York because superhero fiction mostly takes place in New York and it's kind of
Yeah.
important.
So, and then I'm going to go ahead and water down my own list because I say that, and then some of these films could take place in New York. So my number 5 is going to be Ghostbusters, which you got to think about, as I already mentioned. A scene in the library, especially the New York Public Library, and then you're right, that actual firehouse is
Yeah.
there, and then
I don't know. That could take place.
some
in
of the weird
Chicago.
shit that happens, people are like, because it's people are so apparently unaffected by things in the city of New York.
Yeah.
I hate to move there because like you get murdered in daylight, no one would care because that's what you hear. Is there's so much bustling going on. That
One
no
of the
one would
reasons
notice.
is because of these movies.
Yeah. Number 4 is going to be Big. When I was a child, I always wanted to be Tom Hanks as an adult and play on a giant piano, steal that giant piano. And he worked for a toy company.
You've actually got pretty close to that.
Yeah, I am a giant child. And I don't work for a toy company, but I am a
that
Never mind.
make
Let's
you-
move on.
Does that make Robbie Robert Loggia?
He does. Robert Loggia. Okay. Number 3, Gangs of New York,
Ah.
which I love Daniel Day-Lewis. And it's a Scorsese film.
And Leo DiCaprio.
And Leo. And that was when early on when I still hated Leo.
And is Cameron Diaz in that movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Leo's one of those people that I saw. The first thing I'm familiar with, because I didn't see, what's the one he's in with Johnny Depp?
What's
Eating
Eating
Gilbert
Gilbert
Grape?
Grape?
The first film I saw with him was actually Titanic. and I was like, "Who is this kid?"
Did you not see him in Family Ties?
No, I did. I don't remember. See, I don't remember him in Family Ties, and I didn't have. Was it Family Ties?
Yeah, because it pissed the little kid off.
It was
the one with
Family
Kirk
Ties.
Cameron,
It was Family Ties. So I actually couldn't remember. I saw him in it, and I was like, I don't understand why the ladies like him. I don't see the big deal. This kid's not going to be around for long. What a shitty actor. Fuck this guy. I was wrong. More boy was I wrong. I love
It's
Leo.
always a good career move to partner up with Scorsese.
Yeah, oh yeah. He's done a phenomenal job. He's a great actor. And again, the whole cast, such a great film. Very bloody, very violent. Number 2 is going to be one that I think we might have mentioned earlier, but it wasn't on anybody's top 5. One of my favorite Pacino films is Dog Day Afternoon. I think it's just a great film, and it couldn't really take place anywhere else in New York. I mean, New York, it fits New York, you know what I'm saying, with the bank robbery and everything in the big city. Such a great film. And then my number 1, and it's that director, too, that you mentioned that, it's on my top 5, and I forgot to mention that director. Number 1, which I'm surprised it didn't make you guys' list, Taxi Driver. It's kind of a fucked up film. It was on your list.
Yeah,
it was on your list.
It's in my top 10.
It's just, and this was back before New York got cleaned up, really. I mean, you could, apparently, according to that film, just, if you went downtown, just the red light district everywhere, apparently.
Oh, yeah.
Just like
New York,
so seedy.
when I was a kid, because of movies, New York fascinated me, and it scared the hell out of me. Because you had movies like Taxi Driver, and you were like, oh, that's
Warriors.
so scary. But yeah, you're right. And Escape from New York. And then you had movies like Big, and the movies just made you feel like New York was a magical place.
Yeah, but even in the beginning of Big, when he's in the hotel and he's crying.
Oh, yeah.
he's scared.
Absolutely. That's a
It's
powerful scene, man.
That's what New York was in the 80s.
John, that's a really good top 5, man.
It was hard to narrow down in top 5. There's so many films that take place in New York, or that New York's a part of the film.
So many I had to leave off. I left off Taxi Driver and New York, After Hours, Llewyn Davis, The Apartment by Billy Wilder. I had to leave off a lot of good ones. French Connection. Luckily, you guys picked up a lot of my slack.
I left off Highlander. I left off Coming to America.
Yeah.
Once Upon a Time in America.
There's some good movies in New York, man, and I think we had a great show, John.
I was really seriously wanting to do Escape from New York, but then social media was just
holy shit,
no,
that's everybody's
no,
favorite. Yeah,
top 10.
It is a good film though, a good Carpenter film.
Yeah, it really is, but I don't think it's necessarily the best Carpenter film at all.
Oh no,
nor the best Carpenter soundtrack.
I'll give you that.
But
yeah.
It is a good film, and it's way better than Escape from L.A.
It's better than Escape from L.A. I think the problem with that it's further down the list is that Carpenter has a couple really great films, so it's hard to justify moving that up further. So, yeah.
Well, we appreciate everybody tuning in, checking out New York movies. Let us know in the comments down below, what are your favorite New York movies? We appreciate everybody listening, and of course, everybody for being here, including Mike the Voice Matthews,
yo,
Drew Madsen.
Hey.
I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and do stay tuned for the next episode of Pop Culture Philosophers, where we will be talking about robots,
in disguise.
androids.
wait.
Robots, androids, and artificial intelligence. It's going to be a really cool sci-fi-rific show. I'm very excited for it. And I'm signing off. Rockin' Robbie Billups, that love New York and the Yankees. Passing it over to John Hammertime Holshoe.
I heard we weren't going to be on that next episode. It's just going to be AI doing the whole show.
Yes.
Without us. We're going to make it a robot John, a robot Robbie, a robot Drew, a robot Mike. And they'll just do the whole fucking thing. It's going to be in binary, so... oh, that works out. We appreciate everybody tuning in, and
special guest Bender.
Checking this. If you haven't checked us out on the website, if you subscribe, go to the website. There's a lot more content on there than the podcast. If you're on the site and you're checking us out, there's a lot more content on our YouTube channel, and of course, you can always subscribe to the show with iTunes or with Android, and it shows up magically on your phone. Magic. Jesus just puts it right there on your phone. Oh, that's how that works.
How convenient.
Yeah. He's into the podcasting.
Goes our,
at least the
audience.
Jesus artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was cheaper to have it made in Mexico. So we appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll leave you this final thought. And that final thought is sometimes you don't need final thoughts because they're fucking stupid.
And I love New York.
New York, New York.
Fuck the Knicks.
That's it.
And the Mets.
And the Mets.
Yeah, there's a lot of sports
Go
teams
Rangers.
Yeah.
Go
sure.
Rangers and Yankees.
I would say go Tigers, but it's been a hard couple weeks, and I don't want to talk about it. It makes me upset.
Also not New York. Get out of here.
Yeah, they're not in New York.
Detroit movie's coming next.
Oh, we should do Detroit. There's actually a Detroit
It'll all
movie
be
coming
RoboCop.
out. It'll be RoboCop.
RoboCop 2.